Hi, everyone. So just kind of quickly moving through, I'm here to speak with you today on chronic pelvic pain and my story, and hopefully get some. So I'm just a patient advocate. I have no conflicts to disclose. Same here. Mine is less a presentation and more of a bunch of memes that I made. So hi, my name is Laura, and I'm a pelvic pain warrior. It started when I began menstruating at 12 years old, and the aggressive period pain symptoms I experienced at least once a month were constant, with acute spikes so painful I would pass out. This was not an unusual occurrence. However, I did learn to cope with and manage the pain, like an athlete conditioning their body. But this was the pain that wears you down slowly, chipping away at you without you really noticing at first. After less than 2 years, I couldn't take it anymore and was put on birth control to manage the symptoms. But as I aged, my pain and symptoms expanded and increased in intensity, duration, and severity, eventually creating a full-time pain that was unbearable around menstruation. By the time I was 20, I had a hard time holding down steady work, missing too much due to pain, fatigue, and the following inevitable illness that comes with being run down by pain. But other than being put on birth control so young, I was given no other options. The explanation at the time was that I would grow out of it, while in reality, as I aged, things got quickly worse. Intercourse was painful, sitting, even going to the washroom. My stomach and bowels were the worst affected, with spasms so powerful I would vomit. I would sit on the toilet for hours sobbing, desperate for the relief of release, but also terrified of the pain. I often rotated between sitting on the toilet and laying down on the cool floor, curled in as tight as a ball as I could. Even on birth control, I ended up in the emergency room almost monthly, begging for any kind of relief they could give me, telling them there was something wrong, despite the negative scans and testing, the doubtful, judging looks. I went through several doctors in those early years, told I was only looking for attention, that every woman went through this pain and they were fine, that I was just lazy and wanted to stay home. All of this despite what I knew I was feeling, or was I really crazy? Eventually, after almost 10 years, I would receive a diagnosis of stage 4 endometriosis and adenomyosis through laparoscopic surgeries, along with some other interrelated conditions. Severe endometriosis pain is equitable to back labor, with women describing that as like being told to hold still while your spinal cord is being ripped out, like you're being ripped with a chainsaw from the inside out, and my personal favorite, like being fisted by an elephant. These are all adequate descriptors of the worst of my pain, and I was going through it monthly. Along with the spasming pain, the many surgeries, adhesions, and disease created permanent nerve damage and pain pathways that were fed by, and was separate from the pelvic cramping. I burned the skin of my belly, back, and hips from the constant exposure to as much heat as I could stand, because the heat took a bite off the pain. Light and gentle touches anywhere on my abdomen, pelvis, groin, or low back would make me shout in pain. My husband learned to stop touching me. The spasm and nerve spikes left my body dancing with constant pain to the point I looked like someone with advanced Parkinson's disease. I couldn't control my body, and the pain didn't even stop when I slept, which created an unyielding whole body ache that I can only describe as feeling like I had been pulverized by a train. I became almost completely bedridden. Well, that's a good one too. I missed that one, but. Now, after years of treatments and therapies, my pelvic pain is the best it's ever been. That said, it's still a constant daily undertone I cannot escape. Added to all of it is the pain and degeneration of my hips and back up to my neck, shoulders, and jaw that was fed and created from spending decades curled over my abdomen, from spending years where any movement just caused too much pain, so I had to stay still as much as possible. And of course, my strong, healthy, athletic body got reduced to one that feels weak, old, fragile, and broken down. My mind feels the same. How to describe it all in words? At times, or in some cases all the time, my joints feel as if I lay naked in a snowbank for hours and then try to move through the different motions of the day. Pelvic tension so taut that it won't let my organs and muscles to simply relax, where I need to make conscious effort in recognizing that I'm holding my body in its now natural rigidity so I can work on release. Spasms that feel like a metal gauntlet has seized my muscles and is twisting them. So severe they create a pain in my chest that feels like the start of a heart attack. Nerve pain that ranges from near constant itchy tingling to having 100 tattoo guns working on me at once, to spikes that feel like I'm being stabbed by a spear covered in dry ice, or a burning that sears across an area like a forest fire. When I feel when my pelvis is tight, in the tightness of my jaw, the pain inside my ears. My coccyx pain is sharp compared to my lumbar that is radiating, compared to my pelvic girdle that is a deep bone ache. It is a constant fight to notice and diagnose how all of that and more is feeding off another, antagonizing another, and what I can do to reduce them. The more my symptoms build and begin to more tightly bind to each other, the longer it will take for things to calm, creating less quality sleep I get despite my exhaustion, which splinters into every area of my life. Mentally and emotionally, I feel like half the person I used to be, with less capacity to be able to manage myself in my life, and it shows. I used to be a person who worked multiple jobs, trained my dogs, spent quality time with my partner and family and friends. I used to volunteer within my community, write songs and poetry, sing every day in the shower. No more. I've always struggled with insomnia, but on my long sleepless nights, I used to clean my house, rearrange my living room, or spend hours in a book or other hobbies. Now when I can't sleep, I just lay there, too tired to even distract myself. Now, I don't work at all. I barely exercise and challenge my mind because it's too challenged by the pain, and I've watched my processing abilities and patience slowly seep away. I avoid discussions even with those who love me most in the world because I hate that I can't retain them, and that each day I lose more ability to clearly articulate myself, searching for words I can't find. And the ones that I do find are often heated with a pain and bitterness that I don't mean. Further and further inside myself I crawl, embarrassed by my inability, feeling pitiful and disgusted by my weakness, my lack of strength and drive. As each year goes by, I feel distanced from my life and everything that made me Laura, who has pain. Now, it can be hard not to feel that all Laura is pain. And it all started with a little period pain that was ignored and undertreated for so long that it took over my entire body. But my pain has gone from a hurricane of symptoms to a tropical storm, now to a constant rainfall with occasional thunderstorms and tornadoes. Besides the necessary surgical and drug interventions, these are what have helped the most. My toolbox is my treatments and therapies I depend on to keep me going, such as pelvic floor physiotherapy with a pain-experienced practitioner. There are several pelvic floor physios out there, but especially when working with complex pain and pelvic floor dysfunction, it's so important to get someone who knows how to work with it. Mine taught me how to pay better attention to my pelvis, which for my whole life was basically a block of ice, and learned to better recognize the different types of pain and symptoms so that I could better treat myself. Before the physio, I had completely lost my ability to orgasm, which had always been difficult and infrequent because of the ice block. But she taught me how to release and strengthen the various muscles, which helped my ability to orgasm as well as have penetrating sex, because I learned how to better prepare my body beforehand and take care of it after. I say all the time, I wouldn't be able to have sex if it wasn't for my pelvic floor physio. Understandably, it also makes a big difference on bladder and bowel movements, as well as simple things like sitting and standing. I absolutely believe that every person who has had disease or surgeries affecting their pelvic floor should get an instant referral to pelvic floor physio, even if it's just for a couple sessions. I get a variety of therapeutic injections for pain relief and release of muscle tension. The most important one for me and for many people in my situation is trigger point Botox injections into the pelvic floor. When I first started getting them, I was getting upwards of 100 injections throughout my pelvic floor and abdomen. Now it's down to about 40 or 50. I get them done quarterly. It's simply dependent on need. Our community is currently fighting the government's uninformed decision to pull insurance coverage on this procedure. Along with trigger point injections, I've found relief from pudendal nerve blocks, therapeutic epidurals, and some other things. Baclofen and Valium suppositories, along with lidocaine ointment, help with more immediate topical relief. Often on bad days, I use the suppositories both anally and vaginally. Visceral massage and manipulation, again with a pain experienced practitioner, has also helped unfreeze the ice block, lessening the tightness of the adhesions, allowing my organs to resume their more natural positions, and relieving tension and pain. This is another service I believe anyone with similar issues should get an instant referral to. Physio yoga helped me to open up my body again after it had been curled into a tight walnut for so long. People didn't realize how tall I was, and I learned how to lengthen and strengthen my body, and it's why I can stand up like this in front of you today. Even when I was working, therapies like massage, acupuncture, and chiropractor, which are amazing, just broke the bank for us, even though we have some private coverage. Since going on disability, I've had to forego all of my therapies, and when I have any money, I get to pelvic floor physio or whatever I need the most. I have been able to get help from different service providers who have offered subsidized costs or allow me to make payments. This is something I want you guys to be aware of and consider. Your patients are likely spending hundreds of dollars a month on medications alone, and accessing these other therapies is often impossible for us because of the cost barrier. As Ross said, mental health is such a big component. It wasn't until my mother passed away that I started going to counseling, and then I realized exactly how much sadness, anger, grief, self-hatred, and loathing I was going through, and how very broken I was by my pain and illness. Your pelvic pain patients feel broken, especially after being told for so many years that there's nothing wrong with us, or being told that if we simply got pregnant or had a hysterectomy or just patted our head and rubbed our bellies at the same time, we'd be fine because their friend or coworker or sister is. We learn to hate this thing inside our body, and we need to come to terms with that. Finding an endometriosis and pelvic pain community changed my life. And myself and another woman met on an international page and realized the importance, and that's why we started the Facebook group Saskatchewan Pelvic Pain and Endometriosis Warriors. And my tool belt is what I use every day at home for self-care. Cannabis in many different forms. I go nowhere without my TENS machine, which interrupts the pain signals. Before I made hysterectomy, I used it to interrupt the menstrual cramping, and now I use it for all sorts of different pain. I also have a TENS and EMS machine now, so to work on some muscle development stimulation. I use a glass dildo, which I put in the freezer or in boiling water. I might insert it simply for relief, or I use it to work on release within the vagina. It's also the perfect size to just sit on without insertion, so the cool or warmth can be directly applied to the areas that need it most. A sleep routine is incredibly important, and finding the right supports for that made a big difference with me, as well as a bowel care routine. I use a squatty potty and use towels to lean over or push or put between my tailbone and the back of the toilet so that I can push without having to actually push too hard. Exercise tools like foam rollers, bands, exercise balls, that kind of stuff, support pillows, help with supported recovery positions, stripping down sore muscles, and getting my body moving when I'm not able to move very much. Finding a connection to myself and the world around me helps my anxiety and loneliness settle. Encourage your patients to explore mindfulness, meditation, spirituality, or their religion, as finding that connection helps take a focus off the pain and reminds of the inner strength. And if I could, I would live in the bathtub. Despite everything I feel about myself, I do know that this pain won't break me. It may reduce me and dampen me, and it's changed me, but it won't break me. One of the hundreds of reasons for that began when a brave young doctor told me what I had been desperate to hear for almost a decade and would have helped the most in my health journey. I don't know what's wrong with you, but I believe you, and we'll find out together. Even though I still have to deal with ignorant practitioners every type, I know that my team, who I mostly had to put together on my own, sees me and trusts that I know my body. so I won't break. Sadly, I know with certainty that it will break others. More than 1 in 10 women struggle with pelvic pain and disease, waiting an average 8 to 10 years for a diagnosis, and whose usual main of treatment is birth control, which is a damaging Band-Aid. It's a huge amount of the population that is incredibly judged and underserved. Non-biased belief, informing yourselves, educating others. These are the most important things that you can do to help better serve your patients and improve their quality of life, and maybe even save them. My name is Laura, but you can call me Warrior. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Laura.
There's a couple of resources attached to my slides, so you can check them out. Yeah, that's it.